In today's deep dive video for WordPress and Elementor Pro, I'm going to take you through and show you how you can build an online car sales based website. We're going to take a look at how we can create custom loop items, how we can set up filters, searches, all those kinds of good things. This video does assume a certain level of prior knowledge though. So as long as you're comfortable with advanced custom fields, the basics of it, at least understanding what it does, custom post types, dealing with a theme builder inside Elementor Pro itself, then you should be good to go. However, if that isn't the case, I would recommend taking a look at the playlist that's in the description below that's going to get you up to speed with most of those fundamentals that you need to follow along with this video. So providing you are okay to follow along, let's just jump in and take a look at all the plugins we're going to be using for this particular tutorial. Okay, so let's just take a look, like always, at the key plugins that we're going to be using for this particular tutorial. There are not that many when you consider how much power is inside a site like this. But bearing in mind some of these are commercial, some of them are free, but if you want to get this kind of functionality, unfortunately you are going to invest into some of these more advanced plugins. So let's take a quick look at what we have. First of all, we've got admin columns. Now this is one of those plugins. It's free. This is not the pro version. You don't need to use it, but if you're going to be working with custom data, it does make the whole dashboard side of things just a little bit more user friendly. Next up, we have Advanced Custom Fields Pro. This is the Pro version. If you don't want to use some of the things like repeater regions or relationships, you could probably get away with the free version. However, for this video, we are going to be using those functions, so the Pro version is essential. Classic Editor, just basically because I don't really like using Gutenberg. Custom Post UI. Now, I showed in a previous video, in a different video, that shows you could use this to set things up, and then if you wanted to, you could disable this plugin with all of your custom post types in place. I'll put a link to that in the description if you want to take advantage of that way of working. However, we're going to be using CPT UI to set up those taxonomies and the custom post types. Dynamic content for Elementor. We're going to be using that because we want to tap into the relationships, we want to tap into repeater regions, and we want to make the whole process of building those into our templates a lot easier than hand coding. Dynamic conditions, completely free plugin, just very useful when you want to show or hide things, especially if you want to hide empty fields as part of your template. Elementor custom skin or LE custom skin, because we're going to create our own custom loops. Again, if you don't want to do that, you could do away with it, but it is a free plugin. The Pro version has some extra features, but you don't need it for what we're going to cover in today's video. Elementor and Elementor Pro. The Pro because we want to use the template in structure that we've got, that the theme builder and so on. So Pro is one of those things that for me is essential for a project like this. And finally, we've got Search and Filter Pro. Now, if you've watched any other of my other videos like this, where we look at more complex websites, you'll see I've pretty much always used Search WP and Facet WP. However, just for sort of balance and for the fact that this is considerably cheaper than those two plugins, we're going to be using Search and Filter Pro for this example. We can use it and it'll work pretty much perfectly the way we want it to for this kind of site. So it opens up some opportunities, some possibilities, maybe even just a different direction to using those other tools that I tend to favor on a more regular basis. Well, that's basically the key plugins we're going to be using for this particular tutorial. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at creating the basic custom post types and also the taxonomy or taxonomies that can be used. Now, when you're working with creating a site like this, which is a more complex site with lots of different types of data, there are lots of ways in which you can create and structure things. There's no right and wrong, there's just how you want to put things together in the most logical of fashions. So for this example, we are going to keep it fairly simple and streamlined. We're going to take a look at creating a couple of custom post types and also a taxonomy. But obviously, if you were doing this for real, you'd probably have a lot more data that would need to be organized and structured, but these techniques are going to be more important than the physical doing. Now, as always, I am going to assume a certain level of knowledge, so I'm not going to describe every single thing we're doing in this. I'm going to go through a lot of this fairly quickly. So if you're not accustomed to working with custom post types and meta fields and so on, I do have a comprehensive beginner's set of tutorials for that, which I will link in the description below. Take a look at those, then jump back into taking a look at continuing on with this tutorial. Okay, so first up, we're going to create our custom post type for our vehicles. So we're going to come into custom post type UI, and we're going to say add edit post types. From there, we're going to give this its post slug, which is going to be vehicles. So we're just going to type in vehicles. The plural label, vehicles again, with a capital this time. and singular, we'll just drop that in there and take the S out. So we're going to leave all the rest of these as they are. We'll just leave the default values inside there. I'm going to come down then into the settings section, and we're going to configure a few things inside here to make sure everything is laid out the way we want it to. So it's public, yes, we want that. Public queryable, show UI, delete with user. And we're going to scroll right the way down until we get to the point of has archive. We need to set that to true, otherwise we'll have no archive to work with and none of our vehicles will actually show up. So we just need to make sure that's all set up inside there. Going to then come down and make sure that everything else is done. So hierarchical, we're going to set that to true. Scroll down and we're going to say menu position. It's up to you. You can set this wherever you kind of want. I'm going to set this to be position 1, so it's right at the top. Show in menu, we want that to be true, and we're going to simply drop in an icon we want to use. I'm going to drop that inside there. And if we want to set anything else up, we can set that up. You can see we've got supports and so on, so we're going to leave everything as it should be inside there. That's pretty much all there is to it. So we can say add the post type, and once that's done, we now have vehicles at the top all ready for us to start using. Now we're going to create our second post type. This is going to be where we deal with the dealerships. These are the people or the companies that will be selling any of these individual cars. So we're going to drop in the slug for that, the plural label and the singular label. Again, we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to leave all the values inside the additional label section as they are. I'm going to come down and we're going to just make sure that everything is configured inside here as well. So again, we want to say has archive, exclude from search, no, hierarchical, true, and there we go. Everything else, we can just basically leave everything else as it is. Now you might be wondering why I'm setting things to hierarchical and I might not actually be using a hierarchy type situation. It's mainly because I just prefer the way in which WordPress actually presents a hierarchical based setup. What I mean by that is when you go in and you choose from any of the sort of hierarchical setup, we have checkboxes. We can just choose what section they want to go into. So whether that's things like manufacturers for taxonomies and so on, it just means you have checkboxes. If we don't set it to hierarchical, we physically have to start typing values in to see exactly what will come up from the ones we've got created. For me, that's a usability issue. I think it's a really bad way of working with things. When you're going to have values like vehicles and things, you want to organize things. So like I say, it's a personal preference. You can set it whichever way you want to, unless, of course, you are specifically using a hierarchical setup for structuring your data. Okay, so with that out of the way, everything else now should be in place. What I'm going to do is just scroll up and we're going to say add post type. So that's our two custom post types, our dealerships and our vehicles. Next up, we need to create a taxonomy. So we're going to come into add edit taxonomies. And from there, we're going to add in a taxonomy now, which is going to be for our manufacturers. So we're going to do exactly the same thing again. So working with taxonomies, working with post types, most of the values are very much the same. So let's put in the singular and the plural. What we need to do is attach it to a particular post type. Obviously, this is going to attach to our vehicles. So we're just going to click on vehicles, leave all the additional data as it is. And again, we're going to just come down underneath and make sure that all our values in our settings are set up the way we want them to. So again, hierarchical. I'm going to scroll down, make sure that we've got rewrite hierarchical is set to true. Now show in admin column. Now this is one of those things that is very useful. And if you don't want to use a tool like admin columns, the plugin we installed at the beginning of this video section, then you could, if you wanted to, just use this in its place. However, you can only use it with data that's set up as part of your actual custom post types. Additional data like ACF field data and so on, you can't pull in. So there's a happy compromise there if you want to use it. I'm going to say show in admin column. I'm going to set that to be true. So that will show the manufacturer next to any of the vehicles. I'm also going to say show in quick bulk edit panel. So this is where you can quick edit anything inside the actual dashboard of WordPress. This just makes the whole process of setting up manufacturers a quick and easy way if you forget to do it. So we're going to hit true on there. We say add taxonomy. We pretty much got everything set up. So we come over to vehicles. You've seen now we've got manufacturers is in there, all vehicles and add new. And dealerships, we've got all dealerships and add new. So we can now start populating that with actual data, which means we can then start building things out once we've set up our custom fields to associate with these custom post types. So you've got a couple of different groups of meta fields that we need to create. So we're going to start off first of all with the vehicles, and then we'll move on to some of the sort of simpler ones after that. Come to our custom fields, and we're going to say we want to add a new field group. First thing we're going to do is give this a title. We're going to call this field vehicle details. We're going to leave the fields a moment. We'll set those up in a second. First thing we need to do though is set this post type and set up our condition for where these actually are going to be used. So what we need to do is say post type is equal to and change that to vehicle. So now we're going to associate any of the meta fields we create with our custom post type of vehicles. Okay, so with that in place, we're now ready to start creating our different fields. So the first thing we're going to do is say add a new field. We're going to drop in vehicle price. You can see it automatically fills out the field name when I go in and select that. Field value or the field type, we're going to set this to be a number. I'm going to scroll down and make sure that everything else is set up. Now obviously because we're going to sell things on here, we're going to make this a required field. We're going to come down and we're going to say prepend and we're going to put the actual pound sign in there. So this is just the currency sign. This will just put it into the dashboard of WordPress. It's not going to make any difference on the front end when we create our templates. Everything else we're going to basically leave as is. So that's our first field. Next up, we're going to come in and we're going to just choose a vehicle color option. So again, same kind of thing. Add a new field, give it a name, choose the field type we want. Text is perfectly fine for this example. Required, yes. That's that one done. We're going to say add another field. Now I'm going to go through most of these because there are various different field types and they have different options associated with each one. So this time we're going to be setting this to vehicle engine. We're going to change the field type. We're going to set this to be select so we can choose from a list of preset values. So we're going to say select. And next up, we're going to drop in what we want as those values to be. So we're going to set this to be required. And then we've got the choices. So all we're going to do is we're going to put each of these choices on its own separate line. So we've got petrol, diesel, hybrid, and electric for our vehicle types. But obviously you could set this to be whatever you would want. Scroll down and you see return format. We're going to set this to be label. And that's that one done. So we're going to close this down and we're just going to move on to the next one, which is going to be our vehicle specifications. So with this one, we're going to drop in a new field, vehicle specifications, and we're going to set this to be a WYSIWYG editor. And that gives us the ability then to have a fully editable section where we can use all the normal editable keys, things like bold, italic, underline. If you wanted to, you could upload images into this if you set that up in such a way. Just gives you the ability to create a much more visually appealing layout for more complex content. So WYSIWYG editor, that's perfectly fine. We're going to come down and you can see we're going to set this to be required to yes. Then we've got the tabs. You can see we can choose from visual and text, visual only or text only. We're going to say visual only for this because we don't want people to get in and start adding anything into the code itself. We can also choose the toolbar between full and basic, so it's up to you if you want to give people a lot of options or you want to keep it to a really simple stripped back version. We're going to set this to basic. You can control whether you want to show media upload buttons. So if you want to allow people to upload media into this specific section, you can do. We're going to set that to not have it included. And that's pretty much what we want for that particular field. Next up, we've got the vehicle options, which is going to be a repeater field. Now, a repeater field is a great way if you don't know how much information is going to be put into a particular area inside your design, and you want to give people the ability to keep on adding as they need to. So let's just add a new field in. We're going to drop in our field label of vehicle options. And we're going to come down then into the field type. And this is why you need to have the pro version of ACF. Otherwise, you don't have access to these. So we're going to scroll down until we find the option we want for repeater. So we're going to choose repeater. And you can see that will now open up a subsection. Now, this subsection is fundamentally exactly the same as when you create a normal meta field. We're just grouping these into one little subsection. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. We're going to have two different sections inside here for this repeater region. So we can say add a new field. The first one is going to be the option name, and you can see we can click underneath and it'll automatically pull that data in for us, exactly the same as creating any other meta field. Field type of text is perfectly fine, and if you want to set any other values inside there, you can do. We're going to leave this really simple, and we're going to add one more option inside here, and we're going to come back up. I'm going to say add field. Going to drop in option price, and this one is going to be a number field. And that's basically all we want to do, other than putting in the prepend and put in the currency sign. Okay, so that's our option price set up. Okay, so we've got some other options now specific to the repeater region type. We're going to leave collapsed as it is. And you can see if we come down, minimum rows, maximum rows, so you can specify how many different items people need to put in either a minimum value or the maximum number they can do. The layout is only to do with the dashboard side of things when you're actually adding content, and this has nothing to do with the front end of the site. So just bear that in mind. So we're going to leave that to table. The button label, we're going to change that to add new options, so it makes a lot more sense to what's currently going on with this part of our site. Okay, so let's just close this down. Close the vehicle options down. So that's our repeater region in place. Next up, we're going to add in a gallery. Now this is where we're going to allow us to upload multiple images for this particular vehicle. So we'll name it. We'll set the field type. And again, this is something you need. If you want to use the gallery feature, you have to have ACF Pro. So choose gallery. We can then set up how we want this to display. And again, this is primarily to do with the actual back end part of the site, not the front end. So we're going to set this to be image array to return the values, because when we're working with the gallery widget as part of Elementor Pro, we have to return the array of images. So just bear in mind, different plugins and different ways you display this might require different return formats. Now the next thing I want to draw your attention to is the library option. You can see we can have all or upload to post. Now what I would generally recommend if you're working on a production-based site is to set this to upload to the post. What that means is that any images associated with the vehicle you're creating will only be uploaded to the post and not available inside the normal WordPress media library to everybody. Just means that when you delete a post, all that data will go with it, and it keeps everything nice and clean and logical. For this example, I'm going to leave it to all because I'm going to reusing images throughout the entire design to make my life a little bit easier. But like I say, for you, I would recommend upload to post as being the key option here. We've then got minimum selection, maximum selection, the minimum restricting your images on upload and all those kinds of things. Set those values if they are applicable to you. What I would suggest though is setting the allowed file type. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in the various different iterations of the file types that I would allow to be uploaded separated by a comma. This means you can't upload PDFs and you can't upload Word files and Excel files. Just means the whole process is a little bit more logical and structured and reduces the fact that you could have junk uploaded in the wrong places. So that's the gallery field all set up. We're now going to add in a subheading field, and this is just for a design sort of side of things. You wouldn't need to do this. It's just the way I've set things up. So we're going to set this, text is perfectly fine, and then I'm going to put in some instructions. Now instructions is just a good way that if you're offloading this to a client, they may not necessarily understand what a particular meta field relates to. So you can drop in instructions to make it a little bit easier and logical for them. So with this, we're going to set a character limit of 75 because it's only a small space that we're going to be working with within our design. So once we've done that, the final thing we're going to add in at this point is the features section. So I'm going to create another field, name this features, and we're going to set this to be a checkbox again. So we're going to scroll down, choose checkbox, and then we're going to drop in a couple of options for that. So exactly the same as we did earlier on. We're going to drop in some different choices for these particular types of vehicles, and then we're going to scroll down. We're going to set the layout to be horizontal. Toggle, we're going to say yes to that because that just means that someone can easily click the toggle all or disable all to quickly add all those different options in without having to click on every one every single time. Return value, again, like we saw earlier on, value, label, or both. We're going to leave that set to value because we're only working with values. And that is the basics of this particular setup. We're going to come down and just take a little look. And you can see if we want to, we can do things like hide on screen. We can specify where different things are going to be displayed and so on. All those things are perfectly fine. We'll leave those as they are. We'll set the order number though to 2. So once we've done that, we've now created all the meta fields we want to associate with our vehicle custom post type. We'll publish that. And if we come and take a look at our vehicles now, and we're going to click to add a new one, you see all those entries are available to us. Next meta fields we're going to create are to do with the dealership. Now I'm going to keep this, like I say, really simple, but you could add as many details, as many meta fields as you wanted in that are applicable to the job that you're creating. So let's say add new. We're going to put in the title of dealership details, and again we're going to set the location before we set anything else. So all the location is going to do is set this to be post type is equal to dealership. That's it. That's all we need to do. We're going to add in one single field, which is just going to be a location option, which allows you to put in the actual location of this particular office, whatever. Text. we'll just leave it as it is. So like I say, this is a really simple example because we're still going to have the title, description, and the featured image. So you'll still have those in there as standard. Hit publish on there, and that's that section done. The final thing we're going to do is add another custom field group, and this time we're going to create the link between the actual vehicle itself and the dealership. So we're going to create this and call this relational fields. Now obviously you could call this whatever you wanted to, but I'm just setting this up so it just makes a little bit of logical sense to what I'm actually going to do. So post type is equal to, we're going to set this to be vehicle. And once we've done that, we're now going to create the relationship. So we're going to say add a new field, and we're going to name this dealer. Field name, that's fine. Change the field type, and again, we just scroll this up a second. We're going to come down and we're going to just choose relationship. So there we go. Relationship is the option. Now there are multiple different relationships you can set up. This is a very simple and straightforward one. So what we're going to do now is we're going to specify how these things link to each other and where we want to use them. So the first thing, filter by post type. We're going to click on there and we're going to choose the option which is going to be dealership. So we're going to be linking the vehicle to the dealership. All taxonomies, we can leave that as it is. What we want to do though is uncheck these options, and we're just going to leave that set to be search. The filter is only going to use this to search. Then we say set the featured image so we can pull that data in if we want to, and everything else can basically be left as it is. So what we need to do now is just simply publish this, and we've now created that link between the vehicle and the dealership. So if we just jump back into the vehicle section and we come in and click on add new, if we scroll down, you can see we have a new section called relational fields, and you can see currently we have nothing set up in there. We've only got the search, we don't have the post type and the taxonomy filters. And if you want to see this in a little bit more detail, I've created its own dedicated video on how you can set up relationships. I'll put a link in the description below so you can check that out if you want to just go over things in a little more detail. Currently, obviously, we have nothing set up. We have no dealerships inserted and no vehicles inserted. So what I'm going to do now is behind the scenes, I'm just going to quickly go and add in a couple of vehicles to our custom post type and add a couple of different dealerships. And then I'll show you how easy it is to link those things together. So started putting in some details. I've already created the manufacturers. I've added a couple of dealerships in. And we're now creating our first vehicle. So all the normal things are in place. The title, the description, the manufacturer, which is our custom taxonomy. We have the relationships field, which I'm going to show you in a moment. And we've also, if we come down, we've got the vehicle options and some other things at the bottom, which we'll take a look at in a moment. Now you can see what's happening is with the dealership, that's looking at that relationship we set up. It now shows me all of the available dealers. If I wanted to, I could just say start filtering on there, and you can see that will live filter and filter out anything that we don't feel fits in, or if we're looking for a specific dealership. However, if you want to, you can leave that as is, and then all you need to do is click, and you see that pushes that over to the right hand side. That's now been associated with this particular vehicle. If it's a mistake, you can click on the little minus to get rid of it, click to add another one in, and you can add as many of these as you want to at the bottom. So that's how we can set up the relationships. We've created it, and that's how easy it is to actually associate those with a particular vehicle. If we scroll down, we'll take a look at the options. You can see we can easily come in and add new options in. So we say add a new option. You can see this puts a new row in ready for us, so we can now simply come in and type in whatever we want to add in as our custom options. So let's just say for this example we want sports suspension, and then we can put a price value to that. So we'll say that was £1,500 as an optional extra. Add another one in, and you can see keep on adding these. So tinted windows, and we'll say that was 500. And we'll add a third one in, and we'll say this has got 19-inch alloy wheels. Let's correct that. And we'll say that was a £2,000 optional extra. Our gallery, we can say add to gallery, and we can now simply upload images and choose the images we want to insert into there. So let me just upload a load of images a second. These have all been resized, ready to be included. So we're just going to upload all of these, and then I can quickly and easily choose the images that I want to use. So let's just select all of these, just disable the ones we don't want. So we'll say we want this one, don't want this. So I can just get rid of all the ones that I don't want because I've just uploaded these right now. However, normally you just have this would be an option to just choose the ones that you actually want. So we'll hit select. There's our gallery inside there, so that's all nice and neat. Our subheading, we're just going to say 19-inch alloy wheels. This is just sort of like just a subheading to draw attention to one of the key features that we like. Then the features underneath where we inserted those and we put the toggle all button in. You can see that puts that at the beginning. So I can click add all of those. I can click again to disable all of those. So it's a nice, quick and easy way of being able to add what we want in, or we can just say toggle them all on and just take off the ones we don't want. So we give people options and an easy way of choosing exactly how they want to work. We're going to say we'll have all of those. Everything else is in place. We just need to set a featured image, and we'll say we'll use this particular one. We'll just say set featured image, and that's our first vehicle set up with all the associations set up as well. So we'll publish that. We've now got our first vehicle. When we come into all vehicles, we'll see it's listed there. So I'm going to do that a couple more times now to add a few more vehicles in, and then we'll move on to the next stage, which is starting to build out those templates to start displaying the actual information that we've inserted into our current project. So now that we've laid the groundwork, we've added some vehicles in, created that dealership, linked everything together, we're now ready to start doing the front end of the site. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of all these templates and install the one template that I want to use. Now, because we're going to be building pretty much everything from scratch, we're not going to be reliant upon the theme setup. We are going to be using the Hello theme for Elementor because it's a nice, simple, clean, blank layout. So first of all, let's just say add new. We're going to come in and we're just going to search for Hello. There we go. There's the theme. So we're going to say install that. Once that's installed, we'll quickly activate it. And we are then pretty much ready to go. So I've gone ahead, jumped over into the theme builder of Elementor Pro and set up a basic header and footer, just so we've got some content at the top and bottom of our templates. So with that out of the way, we're going to come over to the new section that's been added now that we have Elementor custom skin installed, and that's the loop option. So we're going to click on there and we're going to start building our first loop, which will display the contents for our vehicle. So we'll say add, I'm going to just call this default vehicle, and we'll say create template. Once we've done that, that'll take us over now into the Elementor editor. And as you can see, we have no template saved. So we're just going to close this down and we're into the normal editor itself now. So you can see there's my header and footer. Currently, they don't really have anything in there, but they're in place ready for when we want to put that extra data in and complete the look of our site. So the first thing we're going to do now is create this basic layout. What we're going to do is keep this fairly straightforward. We're going to have a simple nested layout. So we're going to click to add a single row column in. We're going to set the column gap to be no gap because this is just effectively going to be a placeholder to contain the relevant different things that we want. So we're going back to our widgets and we're going to come down to intersection and drop that inside there. We're going to add an extra column in. So we're going to add a new column and we're going to set our first column, second column and third column widths. So what we're going to do is we're going to come into this third column, choose that. We're going to set that to about 15%. We're going to come into our first column and we're going to set that to 30%. That will then just basically work out what the middle column is going to be. So we've got the basic placeholder layout set up in there. So the next thing we can do now is just start dropping in the elements that we want. So let's come back to our widgets, come over, choose featured image, drop that inside there, and you see nothing actually displays. Now that's because Elementor doesn't really know what to display yet. So we can rectify that. Going to come down to the little settings cog in the bottom left-hand corner, click. We've got preview settings. Going to click on that. Now at the moment, it's going to try to display the hello world, which is a normal post, which is not what we want. So first thing we're going to do is check exactly where the data is going to come from. Click on there. We're going to come down and choose vehicle. Next step is going to try to pull in all of those. So we're going to click to change that, and we're going to just type in one of the names of the vehicles we've created. So we'll go for the Focus RS, hit apply and preview. Should find that'll reload the page then and start loading in the data. So there we go. We can now see one of the vehicles that we've set up. So there's the first part done. Next up, we're going to come in now to the middle section and drop in some of the data that we want to display inside there. So first of all, let's say we want to pull in the post title. Drag and drop that inside there. You can see that pulls in the title. Next up, we're going to come in and we're going to choose normal widgets. And it's up to you. We could use the heading if we want to, or the text editor. It doesn't really matter too much because we're going to pull dynamic data anyway. So I'm going to say text editor, drop that underneath the name of the vehicle. I'm going to click on this little dynamic tags icon, and we can now choose where that dynamic data is going to be pulled from. So we're going to scroll right the way down, and we're going to choose ACF field. I'm going to click on that. That will now activate the ACF field link, but we've got to tell it what field we want to link it to. Click on the little wrench icon. From there, we've now got the key, and the key is basically the name of the field that we want to pull data from. Click on there, and you can see we've got dealership details, we've got vehicle details. So these things are pulling in the relevant different groupings from our meta fields. So what we want to do is we want to simply come down and we want to choose subheading. This is just a little call to action about that particular vehicle that makes it a standout vehicle. Okay, so that's that put in there. Next up, we're going to come in and do the same again. So we're going to add another one. I'm going to come down, choose text editor, drop that underneath where it says tinted windows, click on the dynamic tags icon, scroll down to the bottom and choose ACF field, click on the little wrench icon and choose the key field that we want. This time we're going to come down and choose features. This is going to list those features that we ticked off. So things like ABS, power steering and so on. So that's the next one done. Do the same thing again and drag and drop underneath. This time we're going to choose a different dynamic tag. So click dynamic tags, and because we have Elementor custom skin installed, it gives us a new option called post summary. And what this will do is this will pull in a set number of words from our main content. So we say post summary. What we can do now is we can click on the little wrench icon again, and this now tells us we can set the length of the number of words that we want to include in here. So it's up to you what you want to set this to. Obviously, this is a very brief synopsis of the vehicle, so we want to keep this quite brief. You could alternatively create a dedicated field that's the information about the vehicle and then reference that in a very similar fashion. Entirely up to you how you want to go about doing it, but the end result will be fundamentally the same kind of thing. Okay, so that's the data we want to pull in to there. Next thing we're going to do is come over to our widgets again. We're going to grab a heading this time and drop that over onto the right hand side, and this is where we're going to put the price in. So we're going to set this to be a smaller heading because it is quite important when it comes to the overall structure of these sort of listings. So we're going to say heading 4. We'll set this to be centered, and what we're going to do now is we're going to click on the little dynamic tags again, and we're going to just scroll down until we get to those ACF fields, expand it out, click on the wrench icon, click, scroll down until we find vehicle price. This time we're going to drop in under the advanced, we're going to come in before, and we're going to type in the word price, and we're going to put a pound sign in there so we know exactly what we're talking about. You see that now prepends that information. So now it tells us the price is £32,000, for example. So there's the basics. We can style those in a moment. The next thing we want to do is drop a gallery of the images to sit underneath this particular vehicle and the details. So we're going to come over to our widgets, we're going to click and we're going to search for gallery. We're going to grab this final option, which is the newer gallery that's part of Elementor Pro, because it has a lot more control over it and works really well in this kind of layout. So we're going to drag and drop that. We're going to drop this underneath that nested 3-column setup. So this is going to sit inside our main container, but underneath these elements. So what we're going to do is going to click to make sure that's active. Single is perfectly fine. And we're now going to come in and click on the dynamic tags option. You can see we have less options now because this is a gallery field. It's intelligent enough to know it's only looking for data we can pull from that's a gallery. So you can see ACF is listed there, and we're going to say ACF gallery field. Click on there. Click on the wrench icon again, and we're going to choose the key, and we're going to say which gallery it is, because you could ultimately have multiple ACF galleries as part of the way you set things up. So click on gallery, and you can see after a couple of seconds now it should start pulling in data. So there's the details. We want to lazy load, it's up to us. Now sometimes I do tend to find you can have a little bit of a quirk with this where they don't always load in correctly. So bear that in mind. If you see this a kind of strange discrepancy, the lazy load may be the reason for it. We can choose the different kinds of layouts, but we're going to leave it as it is, and we're going to set the value on here to be 8. This means we get smaller thumbnails, and we can come down underneath, we can choose the spacing we want to apply around those thumbnails, what it links to, the aspect ratio, and so on. So I'm going to leave those values as they are, except for the link to, because I don't want to click so you can open the larger versions of these up. I want it to be clicked, and it'll take you through to the vehicle details. To do that, under the link, we just simply come in and we say custom URL. That'll open up the URL link, and you can see again we have the dynamic tags option. So we're going to click on dynamic tags, and we're going to come down and choose post URL. So that's going to link it through to the relevant URL for this specific vehicle. So all the elements are now in place. I'm going to quickly go ahead and style things to make sure it all looks a little bit neater and tidier. Like I say, I'm assuming if you were working on advanced custom fields based websites, you're going to be more than accustomed to dealing with customizing the look and the feel and applying font styling and global theme styles and all those kinds of things. If that isn't the case, I've got tons of videos on this channel on how to get the most out of working with Elementor and Elementor Pro. I'd recommend doing a quick search on there and taking a look at how you can do these kinds of things. Okay, so there's a little bit of styling added to it. Now, before we go any further and we save this as a template, what you need to do is set up a couple of conditions, because there are times where you have some optional entries that people may not actually fill out, and you don't want to end up with empty spaces there. So for example, we've got this subheading and we've got the features. There may be nothing in those. So let's set up some conditions to make sure that if they are empty, nothing is displayed, and it closes that what would be gap up where that empty space placeholder would be. So we'll select this to make sure it's active. Come to the Advanced tab, and because we've got dynamic conditions installed, we have a new entry underneath the Advanced section, and we can use this pretty much through the entire site. Works brilliantly with templates. So we're going to click on dynamic conditions. We're going to set up the parameters for this now. So it's very easy to do. All you need to do is specify what the trigger is and what happens based upon that trigger. So the first thing is tinted windows. This is the subheading section. We're going to click on the dynamic tags option, scroll down till we find the ACF fields. Click on ACF field, click on the wrench icon, then just expand that out until we find subheading. That's the basic trigger done. So now we need to say what happens. Does it show or does it hide when the condition is met? So we're going to say hide when this is empty. So say hide when condition met, and the condition is going to be is empty. You'll see we get a little eye icon on the right hand side now telling us that we've set up a condition and it links through to that. So it'll either display something or hide something. We're going to do exactly the same now for the next option for the feature. So we're going to click on that to activate it, over to Advanced, down to Dynamic Conditions, set our tag up. So we're going to scroll down, ACF field, click on the little wrench icon, come into key, and this time we're going to come down and choose Features, close that down, and we're going to say hide when condition is met, and then say is empty. So if either of those are empty, it will hide that and close up the HTML gap as well. So you can see we have a little toggles that says hide only content. If you check that, that will hide the content if it's basically empty, but it will still show the code and it'll still be available inside the actual HTML code of your site, which we don't want. So that's that done. We've set those things up. Now everything is in place for our loop template. So we're going to hit publish. And because this is a template, it naturally wants us to set a condition. Now, we don't need a condition for this because we're not setting this up to display on various different pages. We're going to do all of that manually. So you can just completely ignore this add condition and just say save and close. That is now our loop built, ready to start working with our next set of template pages. Just want to quickly stop this video at this point and say that if you're enjoying the content and what I'm teaching, please consider hitting that subscribe button and smashing the bell icon below to be notified every time new content is released. If you'd like to consider supporting the channel, please consider using any of the affiliate links in the description below. It doesn't cost you a single penny more, but does help support the channel and gives me the ability to create more content like this for you moving forward. Anyway, let's just jump back in now and take a look at the next step. So now we've created the loop, let's go through and create the actual archive page, which will show each of those individual vehicles and also be the placeholder for where we want to put our filtering and searching options in a little later in this video. So let's create our archive. Come to the Archives tab, I'm going to say Add New Archive, and from there we're just going to call this Default Vehicle Archive, and we'll hit Create Template. Once we've done that, we'll go into the template chooser and we can choose blocks and predefined templates. Well, we don't want any of that. We're going to close that down. We're going to build our own from scratch. So first thing we're going to do, we're just going to drop in something at the top that makes it look a little bit more visually interesting. So we're going to just drop in a new section. We're going to simply come in and we're going to go into the Advanced tab. Oops, I like, we're going to Style, sorry. We're going to come into the background, and from there, we're going to just change this. We're going to put a picture in. So we're going to choose Classic. We'll choose an image and we'll grab something that looks quite nice. Let's just say we'll grab this mini, insert that into there, and I'll just quickly go ahead and style everything just so at least it looks a little bit nicer. Okay, there's a little bit of a design. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to add in a 2-column section. We're going to set this to be mostly on the left hand side, and let's just add a little bit of spacing around this. We're going to add some padding at the top and bottom. So we're going to say 50 top, 50 bottom to give some breathing space, and we'll just adjust this a little bit so it's about 25%, somewhere around there. There we go, that'll do. Okay, so first section, this is going to be where we insert our loop. Now to do that, we've got a couple of different ways we can work. The easiest way is to set this up as the posts widget. And the reason we do that instead of the archives is because it gives us more control over how we can do different things, including filtering and searching. So your normal thing would be, well, I'm in an archive, so I want to drop in the archive posts, but don't. Like I say, we're going to come down, we're going to choose posts from the list of options. We're going to drag and drop that into this main area. And you can see it tries to pull in what it considers to be the right data, which is a normal post entry. But we don't want to do that. So the first thing we're going to do is set up the query. So I come to the query option at the bottom, and you can see it says the source is posts. Well, we want to change that to vehicles. Once we do that, you can see that now pulls in our vehicles. So we've got the basics set up. Next thing we're going to do is scroll back up to our layout option, and from there we're going to change the skin. Now currently it's using the classic layout, which just gives us this normal pretty boring look. We want to reference our custom loop layout. So what we're going to do is change that skin and come down and choose custom. Once we do that, it opens up a series of additional options which are all part of Elementor custom skin. And if you've got the Pro version installed, then you'll have access to all of these Pro features. We don't, so we're going to just close that down to get rid of it so you don't get confused. Next up, we're going to choose what we want to use for the loop. We've only got one template that we've created, so we'll just choose default loop. You can see that pulls that in and looks absolutely awful because currently it's trying to display 3 different columns. So we only want to set this to be 1. So we're going to choose 1, and you see that now pulls in the data for our layout. Now currently it doesn't look that great because we're looking on quite a small screen. As you can see, as we scroll down, our vehicles will pop up, our little thumbnails will pop up. This is what I said about the lazy load. As you can see, as we scroll down on the first time, we get this blank space and it'll open out. So it's up to you if you wanted to keep it like that, or if you prefer to do something, like I say, by disable the lazy load, just so it looks a little bit neater and tidier. But that's our archive page basically set up, just waiting for our filters, which we'll take a look at once we've set up the individual sort of like single post page. So now that we have the basics in place, there's a couple of little things I want to tweak just to make sure it's laid out the way I want. So the posts per page, we're going to change that to be 10. We're going to come down to pagination, we're going to expand that out, and we're going to specify that we want to have a pagination setup on there. Now it's up to you how you want to work with this. I'm going to say previous and numbers. Now currently nothing will show up because we only have 3 different listings on here, and we've set this to be 10. However, as your database grows and the vehicles grow, then you'll go past 10 and you'll have those sort of pagination options at the bottom of your page. So with that in place, we've done all the basics, everything is laid out the way we want. We can now hit publish and we can specify what condition we want to apply to this particular template. Now because this is a specific template for an archive, we can set that up to be the archive, but we're also going to do something else, and I'll just explain that once we get to it. So the first condition we're going to set up is to be an archive. Now by default you can see it thinks you want to do all of the archives. That's not the case. We're going to expand that out. We're going to scroll down until we find vehicle archives, and we're going to choose that. So this now will set up and work with the vehicle archive, and any other archives, if we had like a blog on here, it wouldn't affect those. So they could have their own dedicated layout, or they would fall back to the theme default, whatever you set up. Now, you could leave it at that if you wanted to. However, we also want to set this so our search results will also be displayed in exactly the same fashion. We don't have a different layout. So we're going to add a second condition, making sure it says include. We expand this out and we're going to say search results. So now we'll use the same page layout, the same template, the same archive template for both the vehicles and the search results when we search our vehicles. Now we can hit save and close, and that is now all in place, all set up. Now next on our list is the single post template, and this is where we're going to display the details of the individual vehicle. So again, we're into the theme builder, we're going to choose single this time, and we'll say add new single. Single is fine, select the post type because we have multiple different post types. We're going to choose vehicle. Once we've done that, we're then just going to give this a name of default vehicle single. Create our template. That'll take us over into Elementor, and if we wanted to, we could choose over any of the pre-designed layouts we may have created previously. However, we don't have anything, so we're just going to close that down, start with a nice clean blank slate. Okay, so now we can start pulling in the various pieces of data, but this is where it starts to get a little bit more in-depth because we're not just pulling in basic ACF data, we're also pulling in things like repeater regions and things like that. So this is going to be probably the most complex part of this entire tutorial. So let's just start off by creating something that looks a little nice and neat to start off with. Let's click to add in a single row column, and we're going to start off by putting the actual vehicle details at the top. So we're going to have the name of the vehicle and the nice big thumbnail image. So how do we do that? Making sure we select this, we're going to come over and we're going to go into the style option, and from there we're going to choose our background. We're going to choose a background type of classic. Going to come down to our image and click on the dynamic tags. From there we're going to just choose featured image, and then we'll set the basic parameters up for that. So position is going to be center. We're going to leave the attachment as default. Repeat, we don't want that to repeat, so no repeat, and we're going to set the size to be cover. We're going to come to the background overlay, and we're going to apply a nice little background overlay to this, just so we don't end up having this displaying a little bit too bright. Before we do, let's just jump back over and into the layout. What we're going to do is we're going to set this to have a default height. So we're going to say height is going to be minimum height, and we're going to adjust that to a value that we want to use. So we'll say about 525, that looks okay. Jump back into our style option, come back into our background overlay, and from there we're going to apply a very simple gradient. So we're going to set any color we want as the top color, and we'll set that to be fully transparent. And our background color for the bottom is going to be black. Once we've done that, we could then adjust the opacity of this, so we can adjust this so we get a nice dark section at the bottom, which is where we're going to see the name of the vehicle itself. Okay, so we're going to come back into our layout. We're going to say the column position, we're going to set that to be bottom, so any content we put in there will be at the bottom. Let me just change this because I just adjusted that by accident. Okay, so once we've done that, come into our widgets, and we're going to drop in the post title. That will pull in the name of the vehicle, at which point we could then style that however we want. So there's the basics. We've got the background image is set up to be the featured image, and we've got the name of the vehicle that we're dealing with. Now we can start pulling in the extra data for the various different parts of this. So let's just create a new section. We're going to set this to be 2 columns. We'll worry about spacing and things later on. So the next thing we're going to do is come over from our widgets, and now we can just reference a lot of these different single post widgets because we can pull in some basic data. So let's kick this off by just dropping in a simple title. So we're going to drop that in there, and we're going to just put this to be vehicle details. And we'll set that to be H3 because it's not that important. Then to come back into our widgets, and we're going to just grab simply our post content. Drop that underneath there, pulls in the content. We do the same again now. We're going to just duplicate this heading. We'll drag and drop that underneath there. We'll just change that this time to a H5, so it's a little less important, and we'll just put in optional extras included. Now this is the area that we're going to drop in the repeater region where we had the different extras you could have associated with each of the vehicles. Things like leather trim, tinted windows, alloy wheels, and so on. We need to create a template for that. So I'm going to leave that until we've set up the basics, and then we'll come back, create that template, and drop that data inside there. So for now, we're just leaving that as it is. Next up, we're going to just duplicate that, and we're going to just change the text on there, and this is now going to be the image gallery. So image gallery. Come back to our widgets, and from there, we're just going to search for gallery. And again, we're going to use the same kind of galleries we used for the loop template. So we're going to drop that inside there, do the same thing again. Choose dynamic, ACF gallery, click on the little wrench icon, and then choose the relevant gallery from there. So that will then load that up with the vehicle details, the vehicle images. Now quickly, just going to tweak the way this gallery looks. We're going to just change this from 3 to 2, and we'll set it to 1 to 1, and we'll just set the images to be medium, so they're slightly higher quality. And we'll also specify there's going to be 3. So we get nice large thumbnail images to click on. Okay, so that's the basic parts. Now on the right hand side, we're going to add some extra things inside there. So the first thing we're going to put on the right hand side is going to be the manufacturer. Now to do that, we've got to work in a slightly different way because this is pulling data from a taxonomy. So what we can do is we can use the post info. So we can drag and drop that over to the right hand side. And that'll pull in what it thinks is the basic info. So things like the author, the date, and so on. We're going to get rid of all of these except for this one. I'm going to just change the details on there. So currently it says comments. We can click and we can come down and choose terms. Next up it says what terms you want to choose. Taxonomy, we're going to come down and we're going to say manufacturer. You can see that now pulls in Audi. So before we're just going to put in manufacturer, full colon and a space. The link, we're going to disable that. We don't want this to link to anything for this point, but if you wanted to, you could link it through to have a custom listing for all the vehicles that are under Audi. Icon, we're going to change that to be none. So we now have the manufacturer information listed inside there. Now we can just kind of proceed on from there, adding extra elements in. So we're going to come back, and this time we're just going to come in and we say we want a text editor. We're going to drag and drop that over to the right hand side. Click on the little dynamic tags option, scroll down to ACF field, click on the wrench icon, and this time we're going to grab in the engine type. So we're going to scroll down and you can see vehicle engine, click on there. Before, we're just going to put engine type, a colon, and that will then pull in the relevant details. Now you can use HTML code inside these advanced sections for the before and after. So if you wanted to style these by making them bold, you could do exactly that just simply by putting in the code strong. And we'll just close that out, which is just the standard HTML for creating something and making it bold. So you can see that pulls it up and makes it bold inside there. So you can repeat that as you needed to. So for ease, let's just duplicate that. So we'll just copy that. Click to edit it. We'll change the ACF field data. We don't want vehicle engine this time. We want color. And we'll just change the advanced for color. And do exactly the same thing again. We're just going to duplicate this. Click to edit it. Come up. Change this from color to price. And just change that over as well. So we'll do price, colon, space, and the pound sign, because we're dealing with pounds, and there is the price that we're working with. So there's the basics. Next, we're just going to drop in the specifications for the vehicle. So we're going to do the same again. We're going to just duplicate this heading, drag and drop that over to the right hand side, change that to specifications. There we go. And we're just going to come back in. We're going to come into the widgets. I'm simply going to grab the text editor, drop that under the specifications, click on the little database icon, come down to ACF field, do the same again. Expand that out, choose vehicle specifications. Now we could keep on doing this for the other options that are part of this as well, so the other things we put in. So it's just the same repetitive thing over and over again. So all that's really left to do on there now is to style everything. So before we do that, I'm going to hit on publish. So we've got this saved. So I'm going to publish this, include vehicles all for the condition. And that's perfectly fine. And we'll say save and close. So we've created a template. We still have a few things to put in there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at setting up that basic template so we can include that as part of our repeater region. So let's just exit out of this single post template. And we need to come into the Save Templates option. This isn't part of the theme builder. So if you go to the theme builder, you won't see this listed there. You won't see the option to create this listed there. So we're going to come into Save Templates. And from there, we're going to create a new template. Now, we're going to call this is a section template. And we'll say add new section template. And we're just going to call this Dynamic Repeater Template. And we'll just put a space like that. And we'll just call this Options. Create our template, and this is just going to be a very, very simple template. Some really basic data. Going to close that down from there. We don't want that. We can ignore all the different elements on this page, the title that's being displayed at the top, the header and footer. None of that is actually going to be pulled in whatsoever. So what do we need to do? Well, we're going to create a simple section. So we can set this up in multiple different ways. We're going to click to create a single row column, and we're going to nest inside there what we want. So we're going to just come down and we're going to say we want to have in a section, drop that in there. 2 is perfectly fine. Once we've done that, we now need to pull in the data. And we can't do this with the normal fields. We need to use one of the special fields that are part of dynamic content for Elementor. Now to do that, we're going to come over to our widgets, click, and we're going to just type in ACF fields. And you can see that now pulls in a dynamic content for Elementor widget. Go drag and drop that over onto there. Now we can select the ACF field that we want. So I'm going to click on there, scroll down until we find exactly what we want. So you've got vehicle options. So you want option name, first of all, which will pull in the name of the actual option. So things like tinted windows and so on. And then we can go to the next field and do the same thing again. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to simply just duplicate this, drag that over to the right-hand side, and just change this then from the option name to the number. Text before, we're just going to put in the pound sign, and all we're going to do then is just specify we want this to be over the right-hand side. So we can come into Style, set the alignment to be right. Now currently you can't see anything, so all we could do is we could come into Settings, into Preview Settings, and we can select what we want from there. So if we scroll right the way through, we find our custom vehicle post type. click on vehicle. We can just change this to one of the vehicles. We'll just say the Focus, for example. Say apply and preview. After a moment or two, we should then see, there we go, tinted windows at £500. So we'll click on publish on that, and that's created that template. Now you can apply any other styling you wanted to this. It's entirely up to you how you want to do it. But we've got the template now basically created. So all we need to do is come out of this, exit back to our dashboard, come into our theme builder. And once we're inside our theme builder, we're going to come back into our default vehicle single, edit that with Elementor. Once we've got that, we can then come in and we can start changing or dropping in the details we want. So there's our optional extras included heading. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go and search for that repeater. So we're going to come into our widgets and we're just going to type in repeater. There we go. There's our ACF repeater. Drag and drop that into position. First thing we want to do is tell it what repeater do we want to use. We're going to click on there. We only have one, which is the vehicle options. So we can click to choose that. And you see what it does is then it pulls in a basic amount of data. You can see the alloy wheels, the satellite navigation. Doesn't look very good. We can expand these out and we could configure these if we wanted to. However, we can just take advantage of our custom template. So we click on the template option. You can see it says select a template. We can click on there and we can just start typing in what we want. So there we go, dynamic repeater template. Click on that. Once that's done, that should then load in the relevant data for us. Now, it still doesn't look great, and that's because we still have some other options we need to change. So if we come out to the options section, you can see we can choose the column spacing and the row spacing. And if we come into the render section, we can choose how we want to render things out. So at the moment, it's set to grid, and that's going to try to show 5 different columns of information, which is not what we want to do. We can change that, and you can see we can choose things like table, and it'll put a nice table in there. Or we could just choose masonry if we wanted to, or we can choose natural. I'm sure it's meant to be natural. And that would allow us then to use our template that we just created. We can get rid of this separator because we don't want that. So that will put the data in there. And now if we want to, we can easily just come into our styling and we could do things like set background colors and all those kinds of good things. So we come to our background, for example, we can change our background type to a color, set that to be a very, very pale gray, like so. We could put a border around it then if we wanted to. It's entirely up to you want to sort of style it. We're just taking advantage of using those custom layouts and those custom templates so we can control exactly how we want things to look inside our design. So that's our repeater region basically set up. So that's the fundamentals all in place. We need to just sort of tidy up the styling and everything on there. The next thing we need to do is link up the actual places, the dealerships where you could buy this particular vehicle from. So we'll hit update on there just to make sure we save those changes. And the next thing we're going to do is move on to take a look at how we can link those through and build out that relationship we set up earlier on in this tutorial. Okay, so we're ready now to build our dealership template. So let's exit out of our single post for now. Come back into our saved templates option because again, we're going to create a template that's a section template. So we're going to come into section and we're just going to say add new. And from there, we're going to give this a name of dealership and template. Create our template. Once that's loaded in, we can get rid of any messages we have, any options there. We're going to create our basic template again. So we're going to add in a new section. And from there, we're just going to come in and we're going to add in a nested inner section. And again, we're going to set this up to be 3 columns. So we're going to say duplicate column. And it's up to you how you want to set this out. So the first column for me is going to be a little smaller because that's just simply going to have the dealership logo inside there, which is the featured image, then the dealership details, and finally we're going to have a map over on the right-hand side. So I'm not too bothered how this all looks. Let's just click on the first one and just take off any padding on there. Okay, so once we've done that, first thing we're going to do is just drop in an image. So we're going to come in, choose an image widget, drop that inside there, click on the little dynamic tags and say featured image. And again, as always, we're not seeing anything because we haven't set it up on how we want to display it. So again, we can come to the settings, into preview settings, click to expand this out. And what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down until we find the dealership. Click on dealership and we'll just put in Ford, find one there and say apply and preview. And that then will pull in at least the sample data for us to see. So there's the logo for the Ford dealership we're working with. Next up, we're going to drop in just a simple heading. So we're going to drag and drop the heading inside there. Dynamic options again. scroll down until we find the option for post title. Click on post title, add that into there. We're going to add in a text area now. So we're going to come back out of this text editor, drop that into there. And what we can do is we can click on the little icon and we can grab any data that we want. So we can say the post summary, click on that. That's perfectly fine. And that'll just put in a summary in exactly the same way as we saw earlier on when we were dealing with the loop template. So that's the basics, and any other data you want to put in there, like the location and stuff like that, telephone numbers and things, all that data can be pulled in exactly the same way. We're just creating a template using advanced custom fields data exactly as we would have done before. So the last thing we want to do is just come in and we're going to drop in a Google map, drop that into there. We're just going to set this zoom level to about 14, and we're going to set the height a little bit smaller, say about 200, around there. There we go. Change the dynamic tags, and what we're going to do is we're going to come down and we're going to drag in a ACF field, click on the little wrench icon, click, and we're going to choose dealership details location. So that's just going to create a very simplistic map that'll have the location. And in this example, all I've done is I've used the city. I haven't used it any closer to that, but you can put in whatever kind of full address that you want. We'll hit publish on there, and that's the basics now for our layout. So I'm going to quickly just set up a few things on here to make sure everything is laid out nice and neat and tidy, and then we can move on and see how we can pull in this relationship into our single vehicle template. Okay, so there's a little bit of formatting laid out on there. We're going to come back out of this now, exit to our dashboard, go back to our theme builder, and from there we're going to come back into our default vehicle single. Edit that with Elementor. And we're now ready to drop in the repeater or the relationship field at the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down, add in a new section, and we're just going to set the styling up on this. We're going to do some advanced content on there. So we'll have a little bit of spacing above and below. So we'll have 50 at the top, 50 at the bottom. We'll set the style on this. We'll have a different background color. So we'll set the background to be a lighter gray color, just so we have some kind of separation between the various different elements on our screen. Okay, so that's now the placeholder for our relationship. We're simply going to drop in a title on there. So we'll just say we want to drop in a heading, and that we're just going to say we want to have this as our dealers. So how can we do that? It's very easy. It's quite a cool way of doing it. We're going to drop in a post title like we've done. We're going to click to edit it. We're going to come up to our dynamic contents. We're going to click on there, and we're just going to scroll down until we find the post title. So this is going to be the name of the vehicle. So we're going to click on that, and you can see it says TT Roadster. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on the little wrench icon, and before we're just going to, after, we're just going to put in dealers. Put a space before it. And what that'll do now is, you can see it says TT Roadster Dealers. So it's a nice way of incorporating both dynamic data and static data to make your just layouts look a little bit more interesting. So that's the first part. Next thing we need to do is pull in the actual relationship data. So I'm going to come back out of this, search in our widgets for relationship. So I'm going to type in relation. And there we go, ACF relationship. I'm going to drag and drop that underneath there. And now we need to set up that relationship and tell it what template we want to use to display the data. So the first thing it says, ACF relationship field list. Click on there, and any relationship fields you have as part of advanced custom fields will be listed, including in brackets where it's coming from. So we're going to click on dealer, relationship dealership. You can see it says Dave's used Audis. So that's the right information, but we're not using the template. So we need to change that. So we're going to come over, we're going to click on template, and we're going to choose the template name. So we're just going to type in dealer, or start typing that in. It is dealership template. Click to choose that, and you can see that now pulls in the relevant information for us. Display mode natural. HTML tag, we're going to change that to div, or you could use span if you wanted to. So you can see now we've got the dealership is now inserted into this area for us, and everything is in place. So that is pretty much the entire single post template created. We'll update this. And what I'm going to do now before I move on is I'm going to quickly run through some styling to make sure everything looks nice and neat and tidy. However, like I say, you should be more than accustomed to setting up styling to make sure everything looks the way you want it to. Once you've done this, we're ready then to move on to the filtering, searching, and sorting options that we have as part of this particular design. Okay, so all the styling is now being finished for the individual page. You can see everything is in place, including our dealership information. So we've done that. We've got everything in place. The next thing we need to do now is go through all that searching and filtering options. So to do that, we're going to use Search and Filter Pro. So we're going to come out of this, exit to our dashboard, and we're now ready to start actually putting all the details together for this particular vehicle. So what we're going to come down to search and filter at the bottom. We're going to say new search form. Once we've done that, this will bring us into the search form options where we can go through and configure everything we need. Now, I've covered this in its own dedicated tutorial, which I will link in the description below, because there's probably a little bit too much to cover in this one video today, just to show you how it all works. But this is going to be something that when you get into it, you'll realize that it's not as complex as it may first seem, but there's still quite a lot going on that you need to get your head around. So I'm going to go through this quite quickly, knowing that I've already covered this exactly the same thing using this particular example with the cars in its own dedicated video. So check that out. Link will be down below. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is give this a name. So we're going to call this vehicle filters. So let's just drop in the name there. Next up, we're going to choose exactly what we want to filter. Now you can see it says search in the following post types. Well, we don't want posts or pages. What we want is vehicles. So we're going to check off vehicles from our list of options. Results per page, 10 is perfectly fine. Auto submit form, all that basically means is that instead of you having to click a button to submit the changes you make to your form, it will automatically do it when you make changes. If you want to change that so you have a button, then by all means uncheck that and do what you want to enable it the way that you want to work. The field relationships, how each one of the different filters that we're going to create will interact with each other. You can set that to be and, or set it to or. If it's and, it will stack one on top of the other. If you set it to be or, it will use one or the other, or the next one, or the next one. It just has to match one criteria out of all the options that you have available. So auto count, we're going to enable that so we can see how many vehicles are in any particular section, especially when we go through the process of filtering things out later. If we scroll down, you can see we've got available fields and the search UI. Before we do that, we need to set some other things up at the top. So we have display results first of all. So we're going to click on that. I'm going to say, what are we going to use to display the results? Now by default, it says as an archive, but we want to use the same page that we've got the vehicles listed on. So we don't want to go to another page. We want to keep this all on the same page. So what I do is I'm going to click on there and I'm going to say I want to use custom. Now from there, next thing we need to do is drop in the full URL to the page that we're going to use. So for this example, I'm going to drop in the full URL, which is the URL, the domain for this particular site, /vehicles/. Now, if you are unsure what to put inside there, you always start off with your full domain with the / at the end. But then what we have, it says vehicles. Whatever you name your archive page, in this example, vehicles, that's what we're going to be using. So if you'd name this vehicle results, then you'd have vehicle results /. Hope that makes sense. Then we've got the options for how do we want to load these different values and so on. And you can see it says load using Ajax and blah, blah, blah. We're going to leave all those set to their defaults. The only things we need to change are the Ajax container and the pagination selector. Now, if you don't know what to put in there, I'm going to point you to a page in the description below. That's the help page for how you use Search and Filter Pro with Elementor. You have to use the values that are being inserted into there. So I'll put a link to that in the description, so check that out, but it'll give you all of the details, everything you can see what I'm going to cover in this, it'll give you all those details there. So if you are stuck, follow those right the way through those, step by step, to make sure you got everything exactly as it should be. So the Ajax container is going to be this particular shortcode, and the pagination is going to be this option. Now, if you kind of look at this thing and you don't know what to do, like I say, just copy and paste these over from that help file. And what it's really doing is saying that instead of using the default values, you're going to be using this particular placeholder, which is an Elementor widget, and it's the posts widget, which is, if you remember back to when we took a look at creating our archive page, we used the post widget in there. And that's all that's really doing. The same goes for the pagination. It tells it we're using the Elementor pagination, not some other pagination we may have set up ourselves. So I hope that makes sense. So other than that, there's not really much else we need to sort of configure inside here. We're going to jump into the post section, and we can just configure one other thing. When do we want to actually, or what do we want to include? What status do they have to be included in the search results? Well, logically, it says only display the published ones, and you can see that's the default value. So we are going to do exactly that. Everything else we can leave pretty much as it is. Now underneath that, we've got the available fields, and this is where we build up our search. We're going to have, in this example, 4 different criteria. We're going to have a search, we're going to have a filter, we're going to have a sort, and we're going to have a taxonomy filter. You can create a lot more, and I would advise you to do just that. Your database of vehicles is going to have a lot more searchable, filterable data. This is how to do it. You can build it up using the skills you learn in this particular section. So first of all, let's just create a sort order. I'm going to drag a sort order down into this search form UI. Now, the search form UI and these available fields, we're effectively creating a group of filters and searches, and then we're going to use a shortcode to put those into our design. So when you create this, you're not creating an individual search form UI for each separate filter or search. You're creating it to group them all into one. Hope that makes sense. Okay, so the first thing we've got is going to be the sort order. This allows anybody to see the results and then sort them how they want to based upon their own particular criteria. So what I'm going to do is we're going to add a heading and we're going to say sort by. Change all item labels. Well, it's up to you if you want to change the values and so on in there. Next up, we've got the sort options, and this is where we set up all the different values you can basically sort your data in. We're going to keep this, like I say, fairly simple. We're going to sort it by the highest value vehicle and the lowest value vehicle. So we're going to add a new option in. We're going to choose where we want to pull the data from. Now, I can't scroll up the page, unfortunately, but down the bottom, we've got the option for meta value. And the meta value is basically a meta field as part of ACF. So we're going to choose meta value. We're going to set that to descending, and then we're going to drop in the label we want to use. So for this example, we're going to just choose by price, highest to lowest. Now we need to choose the meta field we're going to search against. So we're going to scroll right the way down until we come across the option that says, which you can't unfortunately see, it's at the bottom of my list, vehicle price. So we're going to set that. Numeric is exactly what we want. We do exactly the same thing now for flipping this the opposite way. So we're going to say add an option. From there, we're just going to choose the same thing again. So meta field or meta value. This time we're going to change this to ascending. We're going to change the text that's going to display in there to the opposite way around. So from lowest to highest. Change the meta key again to vehicle price. And numeric is perfectly fine. So what we've done now is we've created a simple sort. We can go from the highest price to the lowest priced, or from the lowest price to the highest priced. So we're going to close that down. So that's our first set of options. The next step we've got is the search option. So again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to grab an available field, drag and drop that underneath. And this time we're going to just call this vehicle search. I'm going to drop that in there, and we're going to just leave search. That's perfectly fine. And we're just going to come into this one, and we're going to use it for screen readers. I'm going to say vehicle search form. That's it. That's all you really need to do. Nothing more we need to worry about. And close that down. Next up, we're going to put in a taxonomy option. And this is going to allow us to use any taxonomy we've got created. So we're going to grab the taxonomy, drag and drop that underneath. And now we can go through and tell it how we want to work, what we want to pull the data from, and all those kinds of things. So the first thing we want to do is change the format. Or the taxonomy. We want to change this to manufacturer so we can search based upon the vehicle manufacturer. So Mercedes, BMW, those kinds of things. Click on that. Input type, we're going to just choose a checkbox so we can have multiple different values. The heading, we're just going to drop in there, is going to be manufacturers. The search operator is exactly the same kind of thing as we saw just now where I said we stack these on top of each other. But for this example, we're going to set this to be all. We don't want to have multiple one stacks. So we can say all on there. Then you can just choose the options you want on the right hand side. Display count, so it's going to display in brackets after the vehicle manufacturer the number of vehicles inside that particular section. Hide empty terms, if you wanted to have this, you had no vehicles under a particular section, it would hide it. Up to you. Hierarchical, if you've got things set up in a hierarchy, you can do that. And then you can also work with include children in parents, which is part of that hierarchy structure. So that's that. We're going to close that down. And the final one we're going to do is probably the slightly more complex option, which is the post meta. So this is where we can create a slider, a range slider, so we can filter out based upon price. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over and we're going to choose post meta, drag and drop that underneath. And as you can see, this looks a lot more complex, but in reality, it isn't that complicated. We've got three different options across the top, which is number, choice, and date. We're working with a numeric value, so we can ignore choice and we can ignore date in this example. So range slider is perfectly fine for the type we want to use for the input type. I'm going to drop a heading inside there. Display values, we're going to set that to plain text. We just want those to display a nice plain value, and we're just going to put in the screen reader friendly version. Next up, we're going to choose the meta key. In other words, again, where are we going to pull the data from? What are we filtering against? So I'm going to click, scroll right the way down until we find vehicle price again, because obviously this is all to do with the pricing. Choose that option. We'll use the same for end key. We'll leave that as it is. We're going to uncheck data is decimal because we're working with whole numbers. We're working with thousands. We're not working with units or smaller values. So we're going to set the minimum to 1,000 and the maximum to 40,000. Now you could, if you wanted to, auto detect this, but because I want to have control over exactly what values I want to have inside this filter, I'm going to put them in myself. Then the step value is how big a step you want to use for this range slider. I'm going to set that to be thousands, but you could set it to whatever value works for you. Value prefix, we're going to put in the currency symbol inside there. Decimals, we're going to leave everything as it is. So that's how we set up that particular filter. So there's all of our filters and searches and everything all in place. Let's hit on publish now just to make sure that everything is saved, and then we can move on. Okay, so that's our filters all set up. You can see we now have the short codes that we can reference these in various different places. So it's worth making note of these on a separate little notepad, drop it into notes or whatever you kind of want, so you don't have to keep jumping back and forth into this section. Now, inserting this into your template is a little bit more long-winded than if you've seen my videos with Search WP and Facet WP. But once you know what to do, it's actually really, really simple and straightforward. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the templates. I'm going to come into our theme builder. From there, we're going to edit our Elementor archive. Going to open that up, and we're then ready to drop in the relevant pieces of data. So there's our page. We've got our space on the right-hand side for our filters. So before we take a look at that, I want to draw your attention to something inside the actual documentation of this particular plugin. So I'm under the documentation for Elementor Pro, and there's a reason I'm sort of showing you this. There's a couple of things we need to do before we can actually work with this inside our design. So you can see the basic setup. It tells us before the post widget, tell search and filter that it needs to filter the grid by adding the text area. Don't use a HTML element. And then we're going to grab this little bit of code. So what I'm going to do is going to grab that from there, copy it, come back into our template. We're going to come over and we're going to just grab a text editor. Drag and drop that into there. Select this, get rid of that, and drop in that little bit of short code. Now this won't display, this is just there to be used. You can see it says search and filter ID 123456, and this is why I said make a note of your data for your specific search and filter. If you come back in, ours is number 81. So all I need to do is change that 123456 to 81. We've now referenced our specific shortcode for that filter setup. So that's the first thing. Next thing we need to do now is drop in the shortcode on the right-hand side, and that's where we're going to put in the actual filters themselves. Next thing we need to do is drop in the actual search itself. So you can see it says we can use the search ID, and we need to drop in the shortcode widget. So we come back into our search, we can use either this shortcode, which is the numeric version, or we can use this shortcode, which is the name of the filter. It doesn't really matter which one we use. They're kind of interchangeable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that from there. I'm going to jump back into our templates. I'm going to just drop in that shortcode widget on the right-hand side. So shortcodes, drag and drop that over there, and just drop in what we need, which is this particular filter. And you can see it immediately pulls in that filter, including all of the data that we need as part of this layout. Now obviously you can style this and you can drop in titles and all those kinds of things just to make this a little bit more user friendly. But what we're going to do is we're going to hit update on there, and we'll take a look now. We'll jump over and take a look at this in action itself. Okay, so I've hopped over now to the archive page, and you can see there's all our vehicles. We've got everything laid out the way we set up. We've got our filters now on the right hand side. So let's just say we want to change the sorting order. You can see currently we've got a mismatch with the actual values of the vehicles. So we'll just choose the sort by, we'll say highest to lowest, it'll refresh, there we go. So now from 32,000 down to 25,000, flip that the opposite way, you can see it updates. We can search if we want to, so we could just say, we'll type in focus for example, and that will then filter and show us the focus. And if we had multiple focuses, this other filter for the sorting by price would also take effect. We can then also see that the manufacturer has updated in real time to show us live data. Currently, because we've chosen focus as a search word, Focus isn't made by Audi or by BMW or Mercedes, it's only made by Ford. So you can see it shows us Ford, and there's only one value available inside there because we only actually have one listed in our database. So let's clear that filter from there, clear our search results at the top. And once we've done that, you can see we can easily come in now, we can filter these based upon their manufacturer. And if we wanted to, we can also use this range at the bottom to adjust the pricing. So we can say we want to go to a maximum of, say, 26,000. That'll filter it out and only show us one vehicle. Now you may be noticing that we've got that little weird glitch that I said about with the lazy load option as part of creating our template. This is something that to be bear in mind. You may not notice it, it might not happen on yours, it might just be the way that I've got things set up, but it is worth bearing in mind that it is a bit of a weird thing going on with those lazy loading of those thumbnails for the gallery. But apart from that, like I say, everything else is working exactly as we'd expect it to. We've got all of the relevant data, our filters are working, everything's set up. We click to take a look at one of those vehicles. We can see we've got the Roadster, all the details, the specifications, our repeater region, our gallery. We can see it's available at Dave's Used Audis. So all the things that we needed to be set up are all fully set up inside this layout. Now this section is a purely optional section. You don't have to follow along with this. You don't even have to install the plugin. This is how we can use admin columns to create a much nicer way of listing vehicles, dealerships, all those kinds of things. So if we take a look at our vehicles listing at the moment and we see all the vehicles, it's a pretty drab place. We can see the name of the vehicle or the title of the vehicle. We can see what manufacturer it is and when it was posted, but that's it. And it just makes, when you're looking through 50, 100 different vehicles, it can be quite difficult to find exactly what you're looking for. So we're going to use the free version of admin columns, and we can use that to great effect. To do that, all we need to do is come into settings and down to admin columns. Once we're inside there, you can see it's pulling up the first option, which is my templates. We don't want that. We want to change this to vehicles. So we're going to click on vehicles. That will then show us those fields we just saw. Now we can get rid of some of these. I don't want dynamic content. We're going to remove that completely. The title, we're going to edit that, and we're just going to change that to vehicle, just because it makes a little bit more sense. Manufacturer is perfectly fine. So the next thing we're going to do is add some extra columns in. So let's say we're going to add a new column, and from there we're going to just set this to use the featured image. So we can say featured image on there. We can set this up, we set widths on there if we want to, we can do all that kind of stuff. So we can just say, let's just say 10%. And 60 and 60 for the image size is perfectly fine. We'll say save on there. We'll reorder this now, and we'll drop that. So it's the very, very first thing we'll see inside here. So let's just drag and drop that up there. Okay, let's just update this and just make sure everything is in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump back over to our vehicles now and just see those little changes we've made and how that already makes a big difference. So now you can see we can easily pinpoint which vehicle it is we're talking about. We've renamed this. We can sort of sort these based on that. We've got the manufacturer. So all those kinds of things are in there. We can still go further than that though if we want to. So let's come back into our admin columns, and let's just say we're going to add something new in. So you can say add a new column. This time we're going to set the actions, and we'll say use icons. We'll leave that at the end, and we'll hit update again, come back into our vehicle listing, and we'll refresh this page. Now we've got these actions over on the right hand side that do the normal things you'd expect, which is edit, quick edit, delete, and to view it. So it's the same as hovering over the name of the vehicle. However, it just makes it a little bit more user friendly in my opinion. You can immediately see those icons, you know you can click on them, and someone that's not used to working with WordPress may not even notice the fact you've got quick edit and things along those lines. So you can, if you want to, come back into your admin column section, add additional columns, and if we want to, we can reference various different pieces of information from advanced custom fields. So if we come in and we just say we want to use advanced custom fields, we click on there and we get an error message saying you need the pro version to do this. And it's right, you do need the pro version to do it. However, we can still bypass that to a certain extent. If we choose custom fields and click on custom field, we now have the ability to choose various different custom fields. So you can see we can choose from dealer, but we can also open that up and we've got a ton of different options. So if we wanted to, we can say we want to list the vehicle price. Display options beforehand, we'll put the pound sign inside there and we'll just change the custom field label and we'll put price and put the pound after that. Now we can't do sorting and editing and so on because they are pro only features, but we've already made this whole section just a lot more user friendly. So let's just drag that up now and we'll just put that price is next to the vehicle name. We'll hit update on there, jump back over and refresh this. And now we have a much more user-friendly location to work with our vehicles. We can just check the vehicle image, the name of it, the price, the manufacturer, the date it was published, and we've got all those quick actions available. So you can keep on adding more columns to this, rearranging things, setting it out however you want to make this just a much more usable location. You could do the same thing with your dealerships. You could drop in the featured image for their logo. All those kinds of things just makes the dashboard of WordPress a lot more user-friendly moving forward. So we've covered a lot of different bases in this particular tutorial. Hopefully it's opened your eyes to some of the things you can do with this combination of tools. If it has, let me know in the comment section below. I love getting your feedback. Now, speaking of feedback, if you've got ideas for future tutorials or different topics on the same vein as this, let me know in the comment section. Drop in some links in there to some sites you think are a good source of inspiration. I'll take a look, and if I think they're viable, I'll take a look at creating more content like that moving forward. As I mentioned, all of the applicable links are in the description below for both the content I've referenced, any videos, playlists, and so on. And if you consider using any of those affiliate links, you get my gratitude, and it costs you no more money whatsoever, but does help me create more content like this moving forward. As always, my name's been Paul C. This has been WPTuts. Until next time, take care.